Hello everyone, you welcome to The Inside. I am Babli Jonathan. For several years, children, women, men, including young people, are not only wounded, killed and or displaced, but they are also traumatized by the continuous violence in the northwest, southwest and far north regions of the Republic of Cameroon and other parts of the African continent and the globe at large. And the continuous violence has generated far-reaching consequences on the health of both the civilian and military population. And we're going to be examining the mental health consequences of the crisis, of the violence in the regions of Cameroon affected by socio-political and security tensions, with focus on the case of the northwest and southwest regions of the country, and of course the far north region where the Boko Haram insurgency has been going on for over a decade now. Meet our guest in some few seconds. Our guest today is Richard Queta. He is a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Babler. I'm happy to be on studio tonight.
Right, we're talking about the health and more particularly mental health consequences of violence. Tell us more about this.
Well, mental health, is just as any other medical conditions, for example, because people tend to stigmatize, to have stigma about reporting or seeking help with mental conditions. But I'm here to let people know that mental illness is just as any other medical conditions, which requires the same treatment as those medical conditions.
What are some of the mental conditions that go a long way to disrupt the normal functioning of the human system?
Well, I think in that regard, I'm going to talk on mental health as it relates to from the point of trauma, the crisis, the violence that is being that we're seeing in the northwest and southwest, because you have children, you have women, you have elderly people who are exposed to this trauma. They wake up every morning to gun violence, killings, and that is affecting they get traumatized, and subsequently they develop other psychiatric or mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorders, and all of those contribute to negatively impact the economy and the health of the population.
Getting up every day or sleeping with gunshots, houses being burnt down, people being killed sometimes in front of you, and people maimed right in front of you, and even some of the people seeing their fingers chopped off because they were working in the CDC plantation. Some of the people seeing their parents killed right in front of them, their sisters, their brothers. What are some of the immediate consequences of these kind of graphic images?
When people are exposed to traumatic conditions like that, something that you can immediately see, you can have people going into depression, post-traumatic stress disorders, because either they witness a loved one being killed, or they see somebody corpses on the road, and all of that is traumatizing them, and those are some of the immediate mental health conditions that the people are faced with. There is depression, there's post-traumatic stress disorders, and it's manifested in different ways. You see people are traumatized, they are no longer productive, And all of this is, is really bad for the economy, it's bad for the country.
You've certainly been in contact with some of the people who have been facing these things in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, and you've been kind of making an evaluation of the situation in view of a medical mission that will be coming up to bring some solutions to this. But before we talk about that medical mission, how bad is the situation of mental health as far as the violence in the northwest and southwest regions of the country is concerned? How badly are the people affected by this continuous violence happening around them?
Well, to tell you how bad it is, I can just tell you that generally from other evidence-based practices or knowledge, any area that is affected by violence, you tend to have a lot of people with mental health conditions. But as far as that in the southwest and northwest, I have not done enough, enough research or been in contact with these people long enough to be able to tell you that precisely this is what I find. But if you look at the cases of any country that has violence, you are bound to have people with most of these psychiatric mental health conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, on both sides, both the civilian population and the military population, because war in itself is traumatic, is violent, and it brings along a lot of mental health issues that needs to be addressed, by the authority in place.
The case of children in particular, how serious or how far-reaching, how far can it go to disrupt the mental state of children who have been in these regions for the past 5 years? Some of them now referring to gunshots as popcorn, because it's almost every day that they're hearing gunshots. Every day. Some of them have seen horrible things. How far can these medical or these mental consequences go in terms of affecting their normal functioning and even their education, their behavior in society, and so on?
If you look at children and how children develop, their brains are immature, they cannot handle stress, and exposing children to this sort of violence is really detrimental to the health of that child and to subsequent how they develop. Because take for example, you have a child, maybe say a teenager, who gets up in the morning and sees the neighbor has been shot dead, the mother has been shot dead, or people in the community have been killed, and they get used to that violence. You certainly would see that child when they grow up tomorrow, they tend to be violent themselves because of what they are used to, like children getting up every morning to violence, and that's all they know. It's most likely that child is going to grow up to become a violent person.
That will affect the behavior in society and the way they relate with other people and so on.
Yes, it certainly affects the way they grow up, their personality, their character, because you see that they grow up in a violent society, and they are not used to, all they are used to is violence. So that's something that is really detrimental to the health of the children, detrimental to the health of the youth. And of course, the youth are they are the leaders of tomorrow. So if the authority does not take care of it, it is cultivating a subsequent violent situation.
How badly can their education be affected by the fact that they have been traumatized, or they have developed some mental health conditions that are not favorable for their learning or the learning process?
When children grow up, what they learn as young children, it kind of takes them into their adulthood. So if you have children and they are growing up in a violent society, it's very evident that tomorrow or when they grow up, that is exactly the type of society that we're going to have. So it is really important that children should be able to grow up in a society where, it's nurturing, there is love, and they can grow up freely. They're able to express themselves rather than waking up every morning to violent situations.
Can the disruption in their mental health hinder them from progressing normally in the on the educational ladder, for example, performing well in school and being able to understand what they are being taught and being able to reproduce what they are taught on examination papers and proceeding to the next class and so on and so forth?
I mean, they say that your environment determines what you become, and it contributes to your personality. So just like it doesn't necessarily mean that children that grow up in a violent environment cannot become productive adults, but it's just a variety of factors that come into play. So, and violence is one of those big factor that has to play with what the child becomes tomorrow.
So if a child who's been in this violent atmosphere in the northwest, southwest, or the far north region of the country develops some of these medical conditions, it may not necessarily stop the child from progressing in the educational data, but can it affect the level of understanding of the child? Can it affect the level of performance of the child in school, for example, relating with other students, relating with other peoples, and then sitting in the classrooms, following the lectures normally, and being able to capture exactly what they are being taught and so on?
Yes, it is. It is a factor. Like I said before, it is a factor that contributes to the development of the child, but it is not. It's not a determinant factor as to whether that child becomes successful or not. Because I think research has been done where you see people grow up in different environments and they develop different personalities or different characters. They develop different level of intelligence based on how they grow up. But like I said before, violence does certainly contribute negatively to the development of the child.
Can it push a child or an adult, the violence, to the extreme of becoming mentally deranged, or better still, mad?
Well, I wouldn't say mental illnesses. They originate or they are caused by a variety of factors. You have your environment, genetics, physical factors, and maybe substance abuse. Those are some of the things that contribute to mental illness.
Drug consumption.
Yes, alcohol and drug consumption, if you take them in excess, they can contribute to you developing a mental illness.
When we look at what is happening in the northwest and southwest regions, for example, there have been cases, I've heard some cases where a young person became very violent, killing people without any iota of remorse or any human feeling or something like that, simply because they saw somebody, a relative of theirs, a loved one, being killed in a very brutal manner, and they too became killers. How can we explain that swift change in the behavior of somebody who finds himself in this kind of situation and definitely or quickly becomes completely something else, a different person?
That's a situation where I said your environment and how you grow up, what conditions people are exposed to. It determines your character, your personality. Because if you have somebody who is growing up in a really nurturing environment, a loving environment, there's a high probability that they're going to grow up to be a responsible adult as opposed to somebody who is growing up in a very violent environment. They have a tendency, because all they know is violence. Their brain at all times is telling them they need to be violent, and that's all they know. So you don't expect them to grow up to be, somebody loving, because they've been exposed to those conditions.
How to manage some of the medical conditions that generate from the ongoing violence. We're going to talk about that after the press review. Right now, Immaculate Fogwe takes us to the newsstands, and we're going to see what the newspapers reported this week in Cameroon. Stay with us.
The Guardian Post highlights burning issues such as the Anglophone crisis and succession awaiting President Paul Biya and Macron's encounter. Eden says numerous expectations ahead of President Macron's visit. The Chronicle Times states French President's mission to Yaoundé confidential. The Horizon is equally eager to know why President Emmanuel Macron is in Cameroon. The Median questions if President Macron's visit will handle President Biya's full price dilemma. The Voice Weekender states President Macron's visit unveiling the Frank Biya conspiracy. The Horizon exclaims President Macron and Paul Biya's summit meeting anticlimax to the core. Scant clarification on ending Anglophone crisis. Biya's succession plan apologize for French role in demise of nationalist leaders. Another edition of the Guardian Post reports CPDM National President position, sacred meeting to convince diaspora CPDM supporters to endorse Frank Biya's candidature ends in deadlock. Echo Outlook says Kupe Maninguba Division, the Southwest region, hails President Paul Biya for approving the construction of the Bangem Guti Road. The Post quotes the U.S. ambassador to Cameroon. There's not going to be a military-driven solution to issues in the Northwest and Southwest regions. Municipal updates. Local development in the Northwest and Southwest regional assemblies. Fresh approach captures communities' hope.
Thank you, Immaculate Fogwe, for the press review. We are still with our guest, Richard Queta, psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. Now, how to manage these health conditions that emanate from the violence, these medical health or mental health conditions?
Mental health itself is a specialty. So, management of mental health conditions, it has different modalities. You have psychopharmacology, which is the use of medications. You have psychotherapy, which is like counseling and talking, behavior therapy, talking to the person so that they can better develop coping mechanisms or better methods of dealing with their mental health illnesses. So, but as far as Cameroon is concerned, I don't know how developed mental health is in Cameroon, because I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner in the U.S. and I'm just getting involved in mental health here because we came here the last time we had a medical mission in Chang, and we are preparing for another medical mission. So I don't know to what level mental health is practiced in Cameroon, but I do understand and know that there is a lot of stigma, not just in Cameroon, everywhere, worldwide, that mental illnesses have some level of stigma attached to them. And we are hoping that people get to know that mental illness is just as any medical conditions that needs treatment.
During the medical mission that you had in Chang, in the west region of the country, who did you meet? What did you find out?
Well, if you look at our last interview, when we went to Chang, we saw a lot of patients. But when people come, they talk to you. It's from your assessment that you are able to determine that some of these people are having some mental illnesses, but even though that's not their primary reason for coming, that's not their chief complaint for coming to the medical mission to seek medical assistance. So it's in the course of interviewing them, in the course of doing your assessment, that you determine that this person is likely having a mental illness, even though they did not tell you that that is what they are suffering from, because people tend to not seek help for mental health conditions.
Because of the stigma.
Yeah, probably because of the stigma, or probably because maybe some of them think that it's just the stress, the daily stress of life, that does not need treatment, and they, like you said, they believe that it's going to pass away. But some of them, I don't know, depending on the individual, because people take illnesses, people react to illnesses differently. Some people, they need treatment. Some people need aggressive treatment. Some people need maybe mild treatment for the same condition, and they respond differently to the medication or to the treatment option that is offered.
But it's crucial to seek the attention of medical experts instead of waiting, and then maybe at the end of the day it gets to a situation where it becomes difficult to manage.
Yes, I would advise that, if people think that, or if people know that they have either a medical condition or a mental illness, they should seek help from the right professional rather than stay at home or, wait until the condition has deteriorated and then it becomes difficult to manage.
Well, in Chang, did you receive many persons that you diagnosed or that you discovered that they were having some mental health conditions as a result of the violence in the neighboring northwest or southwest regions of the country in crisis? Because there are many of them who have moved over to Chang and the other parts of the west region.
Yes, we certainly did see people with mental health conditions, and but the fact that it was a medical mission, it was for 3 days. We did not have enough time, to be able to follow up these persons to determine exactly what level of how far the condition has gone, and even though I did see some people with mental illnesses, and some of those we're going to be seeing again when we have our next medical mission coming up in March of 2023.
Right, we'll certainly talk more about that. Now, at the level of individuals, even though you said that it's not advisable to stay back at home, it's preferable to rush to a medical expert as soon as you detect some abnormalities in the functioning of the attitudes of a child, for example, or you as an adult, in order to be sure of what is the problem and get the right cure, the right solution to it. But within the context of society, for example, in the northwest and southwest regions where there is this violence going on, and there are people whose properties have been destroyed, whose loved ones have been killed, who have been forced to abandon everything and have moved over to other areas of the country and are seeking refuge even in neighboring Nigeria in very precarious conditions. Is it not wise for the government, for example, to put in place some a kind of structure that should take care of those people and counsel them, as you said, and avoid a situation where there will be a whole generation of people with mental conditions because of the violence?
Well, the crisis certainly does create a lot of mental conditions. Even with COVID itself, COVID-19 was also a contributor to more cases of mental illnesses. So, as a person, I don't want to talk about what the government does or what the government does not do, because I'm not a politician. I'm a mental health professional, so I like to stay on my lane and talk purely mental health. But as far as managing those conditions, it would be advisable if there were institutions or medical facilities that take care of those people with mental illnesses, because you're certainly going to see a rise in mental health conditions with the violence, the crisis, and also with the pandemic, COVID-19. There's been a rise in people. People are stressed out. There's a lot of depression, anxiety, and all those mental conditions.
After some interviews, we're going to talk about the upcoming medical mission, what you're coming to do, and how it's going to help in solving some of these problems. Interviews of the week.
We have so many problems, the crisis problem all over Cameroon. We think it can help us to bring some ideas that can help to solve those crises. It's our colonial master, so we need him at least to give us some support. We are really suffering and things are hard.
We have the English speaking and the French speaking. Then the people, there was reunification. So people are minding that there was no reunification. I would like him to bring the two parties together, and then there be reconciliation. I think reconciliation is the most important.
If you think France will come and say, hey, you people should stop this war, I will do this. If you're supposed to do something that will prevent this war, it's supposed to be done it since, not now. There is nobody who will leave his own country and come and survive, come and save you in this 21st century. So if we are still counting on France, it means we don't know where we are going. We are the ones losing our people. Cameroonians are dying, both militaries and civilians and the armed. They are all Cameroonians. Cameroonians will sit down and rethink how they can solve their own problems.
Concerning the visit of President Macron to Cameroon, we of the Popular Action Party think that it's a normal thing for the French president to visit his homologue, the president of Cameroon. But then when the visit is having a lot of speculations that raises expectations of Cameroonians negatively, it implores us to think of the French or France-Afrique culture of trying to always maintain a kind of relationship that is unequal politically, diplomatically, and economically. And unequal in the sense that it is seen in most African countries that France always manipulates or intervene in the internal politics of its former colonies. That has been the case in Ivory Coast, have been the case in Mali, have been the case in Chad, in Gabon, and probably because there is the issue of political transition looming in Cameroon, given that the current head of state is tired and old, and a lot of talks around the grey or unconstitutional transfer of power, then the French president is visiting to consolidate such arrangements by speculations, like I said. But then, we of the party think that these are the kind of things that should not be encouraged in the 21st century, in 2022. France itself is a country that have one of the best social security system in the world. France have an advanced democracy with competitive politics, and the functioning of a NAM in France is a complete different picture of what is operating in Cameroon. We do not expect that after a tough competition between President Macron and Marine Le Pen, which gave Macron the power and the ability to be elected by the French people, he should have in his agenda the idea of coming to Cameroon to help the Cameroon government maintain a continuity of certain kind of political class or elite that will keep on subjugating and dominating Cameroonian people to get today divided in multiple fronts in order that poor leadership reflected in the government of President Paul Biya to continue. The message here is that we are against unconstitutional transfer of power. We are against external support for unconstitutional transfer of power coming from France or any other country. And we are against electoral fraud in due time to elect people that will represent this, the aspiration of their people in this country. And we are saying that the basic things that need to be done should be done by the people that matter. It should be done by Cameroonians themselves. It should be done by the political leaders. It should be done by the right people. And the Cameroon government has failed in its responsibility to live up to expectation. The responsibility still lies in the hands of Cameroonians who surrendered part of their will, part of their social contract to a class of people to govern them. And we say no to Frank's African culture, no to domination of former colonial countries, no to any kind of magu visit of Emmanuel Macron in Africa. What happened in Simalene the other day was so shameful, extremely shameful, something that is laughable, where students in a university teaching political sciences and law spend 4 to 5 hours under cold in bad weather conditions, waiting for French president, clapping and singing in a country where you are not guaranteed job after that same university you are attending, and the same kind of political demagogies. It's shameful. And it is also shameful that the head of state is unable to make it clear to Cameroonians whether he will leave power in 2025 or not. It is quite shameful. We were expecting someone who should be happy to say, of course, I'm tired, I have to retire, I have to rest, pay the Labour Court of Cameroon, or even by conscience, or by leaving some sort of legacy. Here we are seeing someone who is less concerned about the people whose interest for the past years in governance had been to conserve, retain, maintain, and sustain power, and nothing else but power. So it's things that we call on the president, the current government, the international community, and everyone to reflect on. Actually, as of now, Cameroon needs an arena of competitive politics, constitutional democracy, and this can work better in a new federal republic. And this is what we are proposing to Cameroonian people and to friends of Cameroon, for us to work together to achieve that.
The purpose of the July session is to permit all stakeholders, especially the parliamentarians, to fully participate in this all-important conversation on conciliation, conflict resolution, peace building, and development. A discussion on the rights and responsibilities of citizens and avenues to avoiding as well as mitigating conflict, standards of operations, reception and welcome of citizens to foster service delivery as enablers of dialogue, social harmony, and social cohesion.
We live here very bad, and our children, they used to fall. The condition of the entrance of the house is bad, and they can even fall. Even yesterday, my child fell because it was rain, and the entrance of the house was sliding, and I was even afraid. Even the child even had some brooches on his body.
More than 30 years ago, my father passed away through an accident in Cameroon Airlines. So before he died, his account was in the BSEC Bank. So this is the money that we are trying to get since, and then BSEC is not able to give us, even though we have won in court. And we have a final decision from the court saying that they have to restitute this money to us. BSEC sent a letter after he passed to my uncle. I think he was too traumatized to check, saying that your brother left 6.3 million, saying that if you have chance, you can call the rightful owners to come and collect the money. The person in charge of the bank, in charge of the service juridique in the bank, he called us to say, if we want, we can take 5 million. he wouldn't pay us all the money. If we want, we can. So I refused. I said no. This is money that my father left. It's not money that we were bargaining about. Who did not? Just pay us. We are not even asking for more than what you've wasted time all this time. BSEC is complicating this in a way I can't begin to understand why they will do this, why they won't pay. I just want BSEC to pay, to call us and say, okay, we're sorry, this is what happened, this is your money, your father left, we apologize, and everybody goes their way. That's all.
So we have our water coming down naturally by gravity, but the investment is what you invest when you're having a gravity-fed system. So in principle, it's supposed to be free water. But since once a while pipes break, the storage tank may have a problem once a while, our technicians provide the technical capacities free of charge. Consumers don't pay, but they pay for the basic maintenance, particularly when we have to buy parts. That's the reason why they pay. They don't pay the technicians because the council pays the technicians. But consumers pay a basic amount. Those who have water in their houses, they pay a basic amount of 6,000 francs a year for maintenance, whatever they say.
The Rio de Rey estuary, which is bordering Nigeria from the north or the northeast. You have the Cameroon estuary, which is essentially made up of the Vuri estuary itself, and apart of that, you have the small block, which is up to 1,000 hectares of mangrove, which starts from the Nyong River or bordering the Nyong River, which is adjacent to the Douala Edera National Park, up till the River Thames. So that block is usually known as the Rion Thames. So you have the Rion Thames estuary or the Rion Thames area, you have the Cameroon estuary, you have the Rio de Rey estuary. But within these pockets, you could have patches of mangrove, which at times might be associated to one of the other mangrove blocks. The Cameroon mangrove block has lost about 50% of its mangroves, and the trend is still on. Today, we have 234,000 hectares still left. But mind my words, there are thousands of football fields at each block. Those essentially from the Cameroon estuary, they leave their own estuary block to go and log at a nearby town like Tico. Because of the species which is most favored, the Rhizophora racemosa, which takes almost a century to attain a diameter of 100 centimeters. This Rhizophora is not found in the other blocks of mangroves. It's essentially in this block, Central and West Africa. Mangroves can be looked upon like a system or an ecosystem between land, terrestrial land, and surface sea water. But the marine ecosystem, you could also have mangrove protruding inside, like what we have in Cape Cameroon or in the Rio de Rey estuary. The Cameroon mangrove, it's no exemption to this ecosystem and its role because of belonging to the big Guinea marine current area. What we need further to mention is that outside of this mangrove ecosystem, it's made up of trees, fish, birds, other animals, aquatic, amphibians, some benthic. It's a mixture of all these, but essentially what we look at it is as the breeding ground for fish. In terms of service providing, the mangrove in Cameroon provides services in 3 essential blocks. You have the Rio de Rey estuary, which is bordering Nigeria from the north or the northeast. You have the Cameroon estuary, which
You're welcome back. You're preparing to come to Cameroon, to your home country, with other experts in mental health. What's the purpose of that mission?
We are preparing for a medical mission in Cameroon. Specifically, we're going to be doing a medical mission in Fontaine, in Lebialem, and Chang, in the West Province. And this medical mission is being organized by Lukudo USA in partnership with other NGOs. I am a founder and CEO of LifeBridge International. LifeBridge International was one of the sponsors for the medical mission we had last time in Chang. And then you have other partners like Healing Beyond the Horizon. We have the Polyclinic Fiangep in Chang. Those are the people that gave us the facility to be able to carry out this medical mission. So we are preparing to come in March, not just for mental health, but for other medical conditions, because when we came, we saw, the last time we saw a total of about more than 650 patients. And we also did some surgeries and a 90-day follow-up for people that had those conditions that required a follow-up. We had a 90-day follow-up by Healing Beyond the Horizon. And they really did a good job following up those people, giving medications and following up the people that had surgeries so that they monitor their recovery and their progress in treatment. So in a nutshell, we are coming back in March for a medical mission. We are anticipating that we're going to have more sponsors. Last time we had Lukudo USA, we had LifeBridge International, we have Healing Beyond the Horizon, and Polyclinic Fiangep in Chang. And we are hoping, like I said, we are hoping that we get more sponsors because we are planning for a much broader and comprehensive medical missions so that we can reach more people, that have been affected. You have people that have not seen a physician in 5 years since the crisis started. So this is what we have coming up.
People who have not seen a physician for over 5 years but have been in very, very difficult health conditions. Tell us more about these challenges that people are facing in as far as seeking health services is concerned in those 2 regions and elsewhere because of the crisis.
When we were in Chang, from your interview with the population, you realize that a lot of them have not been to the doctor for the duration of the crisis, which is really not good because you had people with hypertension, you had people with chronic conditions that require the services of a physician to manage them. But they said, 1, we have not been to the doctor because 1, there is no hospital, and 2, there is no money for them to be able to go to see a physician because they've been displaced from their area of residence and they're seeking refuge in a neighboring town. So that makes it really difficult for people to be able to have access to medical care.
What's the risk in staying for this long without seeing a medical doctor despite having some medical conditions requiring medical attention?
There's certainly high risk because if you have somebody, say you have somebody who has hypertension, somebody who has diabetes, and they have not seen a physician, and somebody with diabetes, they are not checking their blood sugars every day, and probably they are not even taking their medication, either their insulin or their metformin. All of that it adds to the chronicity of the disease, because then it becomes really complicated. People start developing complications of that disease because, say for example, diabetes, if it's not properly managed, you have problems with your eyes, you have kidney problems, you have problems with, it can lead to different medical conditions like stroke, amputations if they have a wound on their legs and it's not properly managed. There's other complications that develop.
And could eventually lead to death.
Sure.
And we've also had situations of women staying in the bush throughout their pregnancy period of about 9 months or 8 months or so, and giving birth in the bush without any medical attention and things like that.
Yeah, those are the consequences of a crisis, because when people are displaced, when they don't even have a job, they can't afford to go to the hospital for medical services, and then they have to improvise. Say for example, the females, they need their their pads, but they can't afford it. It becomes really challenging, and because we saw people that have had babies. Some of them are having babies in a house. There's no gynecologist who is following up these patients, and they're just left at the mercy of, maybe, I don't know, traditional or people at home to help. Is disturbing.
And some of the children born with abnormalities and things like that. Right. So, how accessible is the medical mission? When you come like this, can everybody come on board and benefit from your services?
Primarily, our services, we target people from our own division, our own village, but if somebody shows up and they need medical services, we're not going to turn them away because they're not from that division or village. So, like I said, the medical mission is organized by Lukudo USA, and I'm hoping we're going to get more physicians, more nurses, more volunteers coming on board for this medical mission, and so that we are able to deliver, more appropriate and comprehensive care to the people.
Somebody listening to you now will want to know if it's free, if they can just come and get treated and have medication free.
Our medical missions are free, services are free, and the volunteers, the people that participate in the medical missions, they are not paid. They are volunteers, which means they give free services. But we do take care of their transportation, their accommodations, and the services are free.
Thank you very much, Richard Queta, psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today's edition of The Inside. Goodbye.